So good afternoon, sir. What is the difference between a normal feed and an extruded feed?
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar. The normal feed you mean is the pelleted feed. So when you are pelleting a feed, you are basically engaged in a compression process. So the mash will be conditioned with steam, and then the conditioned mash will enter into a pelleting die, and then this die will be rotating, and a device will put it through the die holes, and then the pellet will get compressed and come out of the die hole. And so in the process, you're basically taking and increasing the density of the mash. In the case of an extruded pellet, what we do is we do the same conditioning, but that conditioned mash will go through a barrel in which a screw is operating, and through that process, the material will get conveyed to the die area, but also it is doing it at high pressure, and because of that, the mash will actually get better cooked, and then it just exits the die hole. And then because of that process, normally if you don't control the process very well, it will expand and then it will start floating, because in the case of shrimp feed, you want the pellet to sink. So you also need to control processor, and the equipment manufacturers provide different options for you to control that expansion. So you don't go for expansion, but you go for the cook and then produce a particle that has the near identical density as the pelleted feed. Okay. So that's the difference between the two processes. Now, if you look at the nutritional advantage that you have is you will be able to add in more moisture, more fat, thereby you are allowing for inclusion of certain ingredients that are not possible to be added in the pelleting process. So that is one advantage that you have. Secondly, you will get a better cook, and thirdly, what is happening is the particle will be much more durable. You increase the durability of the particle.
Durability in the sense?
Durability in the sense that it will be, there is a lot of attrition of the feed. Basically, the feed will undergo a lot of stress. When you are bagging the feed, putting it into a lorry, and then taking to the distributor location, again unloading, then loading again. All this transportation will create a lot of stress on the particle. Okay. The particle will be much stronger in the case of extruded feed, and because of that, it will be having less fines, and also if you are using an automatic feeder, the automatic feeder again it is handling the particle, so again it can generate a lot of fines, and you can reduce the generation of the particles by using a stronger extruded feed. And also the water stability will be better when you add it when you put the feed into the water. It will remain stable for a longer time, and it will also have a beautiful texture. When you are adding a pelleted feed versus an extruded feed will get a very spongy texture. So it is also the shrimp would actually like to eat the extruded particle because of that nature of the spongy nature of the feed. So these are the differences between the extruded feed and the pelleted feed.
Okay. Yeah. So for auto feeders, which one is the best?
Definitely extruded feed is the best, and that is the reason why today Latin America, it has become the predominant practice of producing shrimp feed is through extrusion, because it will last longer in the automatic feeder. Like I said earlier, there is a lot of stress on the pellet, and the extruded feed being stronger, will be able to withstand that stress much better.
Okay. So earlier we were talking about the length and uniformity of the pellet in extruded.
Okay. So one of the other advantages that the particles will be much more uniform when you are extruding, because the knife assembly on a pellet mill die, is set apart, and then particles will come, the pellet will be coming out of the die holes, and if the die hole and the cutter are farther away, the particle will be longer. If the die hole and the knife assembly are closer, the particle will be cut immediately as it comes out, so it will produce the shorter pellet. So there will be some variability in the size. Whereas when you are extruding, the extruded particle comes out, and then the cutter will steadily, cutting the particle. So the length of the pellet will be more uniform in the case of extruded pellet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of bulk density, so just can you compare the bulk density of both?
Generally, when you are looking at feed, the bulk density should be more than 650 grams per liter in order to be a sinking particle. So that is a desirable density.
Okay.
And when you are extruding the feed, you also need to target that. Somewhere close to that 650, because if it is, say for example, less than 450, the particle will be more likely to float.
Okay.
So there is a little bit of a room between that 450 and about 600, 650. But you target that 600 to 650 as the density of the particle, so there won't be any floating particle when you are producing extruded sinking feed.
So you mean to say that both the feeds sink at the same rate?
It will be almost the same. There may be some little differences, but you can achieve 100% sinking.
Okay.
It may take a few extra seconds in the case of extruded feed if there is some difference in density, but definitely you can confidently, I can say that 100% sinking feed can be produced by extrusion technology.
So one more last question, sir. Is there any price difference between normal feed and an extruded feed?
Definitely an extruded feed, see the cost of the pellet mill and the capital cost of the pellet mill and the extrusion systems are different. So there is that factor is there. Extruders are more expensive. In terms, when you buy it, it's going to be more expensive. Also, the operating cost of the extrusion is also a little bit more expensive, but it will be compensated for by the formulation flexibility that you have when you are using an extruded feed. So it will be, there will be some partial compensation of that. So again, extruded feed can be used for very special purpose application, considering the higher cost of it. Certain, for example, the nursery feed, and or any broodstock feed and things like that are better, done on a extruded feed. So it's, feed manufacturers typically would do specialty feeds using the extruder.
So thank you very much, Suresh Garu. We'd like to hear from a horse's mouth. So you clearly explained the differences between a normal feed and an extruded feed. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar, for this interesting questions.
Bye.
Okay.